Evan wiped the grease from his hands onto his already filthy jumpsuit and squinted at the smoking wreckage that had carved a 100-meter trench through the Nevada desert. The crash had happened less than an hour ago, and he'd been the only one close enough to reach it before the military cordoned off the area. The ship was unlike anything he'd seen in textbooks or conspiracy documentaries. Its hull shimmered with an iridescent purple that seemed to shift and breathe, and symbols he couldn't begin to comprehend pulsed weakly along its damaged exterior. But what caught his attention wasn't the alien technology, it was the figure stumbling from the wreckage. She was tall, easily 7 feet, with skin that glowed faintly blue in the harsh desert sun. Her eyes were large and luminous, colored like molten gold. And atop her head sat an intricate crown that seemed grown rather than forged. Despite the crash, she moved with an otherworldly grace, though Evan could see she was injured. "Hey!" he called out, running toward her. "Are you okay?" The alien woman turned to face him, and Evan felt his breath catch. Even through the obvious pain etched on her face, she radiated an authority that made him instinctively want to bow. "Human," she said, her voice melodious but strained. The word came out in perfect English, though her lips moved differently than the sounds suggested. "My vessel. It requires repair. The damage to the quantum matrix is beyond my ability to mend in this condition." Evan glanced at the ship, then back at her. "I'm a mechanic. Well, I work on Earth vehicles mostly, but I've got a good head for systems. Let me take a look." The alien woman, Susan, she introduced herself as, though he suspected it was a translation of something far more complex, regarded him with those golden eyes. "You would help me? Your military forces approach. Association with me could bring you difficulty." "Yeah, well." Evan shrugged, already moving toward the ship. "Can't just leave someone stranded. Besides, how often does a guy get to work on an alien spaceship?" What followed were the most intense 40 minutes of Evan's life. Susan explained that she was a queen of the Azurian Concordat, traveling alone on a diplomatic mission when a solar flare had damaged her ship's navigation systems. The crash had compounded the damage, fracturing what she called the dimensional anchor. The technology was beyond anything Earth had achieved. But Evan found that the underlying principles weren't entirely alien. Energy still needed to flow, systems still needed proper connections, and engineering problems still required creative solutions. Where Susan's people had developed elegant, near-magical solutions, Evan approached the problem with human ingenuity, improvisation, adaptation, and sheer stubborn determination. "This junction is completely melted," Evan muttered, examining a cluster of crystalline components that pulsed with inner light. "But if I can bypass it, using this secondary pathway, and jury-rig a connection with—" "Wait, do you have anything conductive?" "The royal circlet," Susan said without hesitation, removing her crown. "The resonium alloy should suffice." Evan stared. "That's your crown. Isn't it, like, important?" "Less important than survival," Susan replied, pressing it into his hands. "Your species would call it practical. I call it wise." Using pieces of the crown, his own tools, and a few components cannibalized from his truck, Evan created a hybrid system that shouldn't have worked but somehow did. He soldered crystalline circuits with terrestrial wire, bridged dimensional anchors with battery cables, and coaxed the quantum matrix back to life with techniques that would have horrified any Azurian engineer. "There," Evan said finally, stepping back as the ship's hull began to glow with renewed energy. "It's not pretty, and I'd recommend getting it properly fixed as soon as possible, but it should get you home." Susan approached the ship's controls, her long fingers dancing across the holographic interface. The readings stabilized, and her expression transformed into something like wonder. "You've done what my own engineers could not," she said, turning to face him. In the distance, the sound of helicopters grew louder. "You've taken incompatible systems and merged them through pure—" "What is your word?" "Ingenuity? Just problem-solving," Evan said modestly. "Humans are pretty good at making things work when they shouldn't." Susan stepped closer, studying him with an intensity that made his heart race. "Your species is remarkable. Individually, you possess no telepathy, no natural armor, no extended lifespans, yet you compensate with creativity and determination that surpasses civilizations millennia older than yours. Well, we're stubborn, I'll give you that. Evan grinned. Susan reached out, placing a hand on his cheek. Her touch was warm, electric. The Concordat should know of Earth's potential, of humanity's value. She leaned forward, and before Evan could process what was happening, her lips met his in a kiss that tasted like stardust and ozone. Time seemed to freeze. When she pulled back, Susan's golden eyes were bright with something that might have been affection, respect, or perhaps both. I must leave now, she said, moving toward her ship. But Evan of Earth, know this. I will come back for you. Your people are ready for the stars, whether they know it or not, and when I return, I will advocate for humanity's place in the Concordat. Wait, Evan called as she reached the ship's entrance. What if they don't believe you? About humans? I mean, Susan smiled, a gesture so human it startled him. A human mechanic who repaired technology he'd never seen, using primitive tools and pure determination. That, Evan, speaks louder than any diplomatic argument. The ship hummed to life, rising smoothly into the air. As it ascended, leaving behind only scattered debris and burn marks, Susan's voice echoed in Evan's mind. A final gift of telepathy, perhaps, or advanced technology. I'll come back for you. Evan stood alone in the desert, watching the ship disappear into the sky. The helicopters were almost upon him now, and he knew he'd have a lot of explaining to do. But as he looked at the scorch marks from the alien vessel, he smiled. Humanity had just fixed its first alien starship, and somehow, Evan suspected, that was only the beginning.